What's going on, everybody? I hope everyone is having a fantastic day so far. I'm here with a very special guest. I don't believe this even needs an introduction. He's one of the most prolific preseason college football magazines out there. Um, his name is infamous. He does a tremendous job. Phil Steele, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, Phil, to join the show. It truly is an honor and a privilege.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that, and good talking to you.
Absolutely, Phil, and let's get to it. Man, the Miami Hurricanes, once again, going into the 2021 season with a lot of hype this offseason. Phil, what are your thoughts about these 2021 Miami Hurricanes?
Well, you have to be excited if you're a Miami fan heading into this year because it is a loaded team, experience-wise, talent-wise. I mean, 10 returning starters on offense, 9 on defense. Now, I'll preface that with that almost every team in college football has 15-plus returning starters this year due to the eligibility thing from last year. But I think when you look at Miami, as long as De'Ara King is healthy, they're going to be in great shape at quarterback. But I also like Jake Garcia and Tyler Van Dyke as the backup QBs. I think they're solid. You look at the running back situation, Cam Harris, Donald Chaney, a couple NFL caliber running backs. The receivers are dangerous. I love the addition of Charleston Rambo from Oklahoma at the receiver spot. I think he teamed with Peyton and Harley be a pretty potent receivers. Overall, the offensive line, a veteran group, I rate in the top 25 of the country. Defensively, probably my biggest question mark, who's going to replace Quincy Roche and Jalen Phillips at defensive end? But I think the replacements are there. Adding in DeAndre Johnson from Tennessee is a big plus. So I think the D-line with Manny Diaz taking over the defensive play and calling going to be just fine. And then the rest of the back seven returns intact. The special teams are solid. I think it's going to be an exceptional year for Miami, and I would put them not only as a coastal contender, but I think if they did play Clemson, be a much better game than last year's game against Clemson.
Well, I sure hope so, Phil. I was at that game in Clemson in Death Valley. We
Oof.
gave up over 120 yards in penalties. It was awful. And I think Miami fans, they want to compete with Clemson because the last three games, there has been no competition on Miami's end. Do you, what makes you think Miami can compete with Clemson this year?
Well, I think what we've seen in college football, Paul, in recent years has been dominated by the top teams. And generally, their experience level is pretty much about the same as everybody else's experience level. But this year, you look at the pack, and as I mentioned, I talked to 110 of the 130 head coaches this year, and almost every coach would tell me about spring practice. Hey, Phil, normally we're scraping to get it two deep together. This year we're running three full teams. As mentioned, everybody's got experience this year, with the exception of the four teams that were in the playoff last season. All four teams only have 9, 10, 11 returning starters. All four teams lose their starting quarterback. So I think the pack has gotten a lot closer to the Alabama, Clemsons, and Ohio States of the world. And I think that's going to make it pretty interesting this year.
Absolutely, Phil. And, speaking of all of the head coaches you spoke with, you did speak with Manny Diaz previously. What's kind of, your perspective on Coach Manny Diaz and, how he's running the University of Miami program with the time you have spoken with him?
I think he's doing a great job, and you look at the recruiting. The recruiting has been solid. I think, I love the addition of last year of De'Ara King. I love the addition of Charleston Rambo, DeAndre Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson through the transfer portal this year. I think that's a big plus. And overall, I think he's doing a really good job. Now, you go back to, and I'll throw this out to you. When I talked to both him and Coach Mack Brown in North Carolina, I mean, let's face it, the North Carolina game was flat out ugly last year. And I had to ask both coaches, I'm like, what the heck happened? And neither Coach Diaz or Coach Brown could explain it to me what happened. It was just one of those games. So I think that was just one of those games where anything that could go wrong went wrong. Coach Diaz was beside himself about his defense in that game. And I've always enjoyed the conversations with Coach Diaz, and I think he's doing a great job building this team.
Well, I cannot wait to see what the 2021 Miami Hurricanes have to offer this upcoming season. Phil, are you familiar at all with Rhett Lashley as an offensive coordinator?
Yeah, well, he was at SMU from 18 and 19, UConn and 17. I think it was Auburn for 3-4 years, all the way back to Arkansas State. So pretty familiar with his offenses.
Absolutely. And, evaluating De'Ara King as a quarterback, How do you think De'Aaron can really shine this upcoming season being implemented in Rhett Lashley's offense in a second go around, not really including a COVID-19 season where they're going to they already incorporated spring football?
Staying healthy. I
Yep.
mean, you go back to that 2019 year with Houston, or 2018 year with Houston, where he put up 50 touchdowns during the course of the season, both running and passing. He's an extremely dangerous runner, someone that you almost have to assign a spy to, which helps your cover, helps loosen up the coverage a little bit. And he's an outstanding thrower as well. I think if this guy was 6'3", 6'4", every NFL scout would have him the top quarterback in the country. The fact he's 5'11" maybe doesn't have him number one on the charts right now, but he is a dangerous passer, dangerous runner, and I like the way he reads defenses as well.
I can't wait to see De'Aaron King back in action, fully healthy from his torn ACL against Oklahoma State. And his first game of this upcoming season is going to be against the reigning national champions. You got the Alabama Crimson Tide. They have it. Their coaching staff is even more impressive than their player personnel, Phil. I'll be honest. Phil, Miami Hurricanes fan base, we are all very nervous. We have a lot of questions going into this game. How do you like this matchup?
But too, my biggest question mark, Paul, is the fact that Alabama, the last 5 years, has had 5 or less returning starters on defense. This year they got 8 starters back on defense. So they're going to have a much better defense. I mean, last year they gave up 352 yards per game. Can you imagine a Nick Saban defense giving up 352 yards per game? I think they're going to have their best defense in a couple of years. Now, the advantage for Miami playing them in the opener is, a brand new quarterback. The running backs, they lose their starter. I mean, they've got good running backs: Brian Robinson, Chase McClellan, Trey Sanders. You look at the receiving core; they lose 2 first-round draft picks, much like they did last year. But I felt 2 years ago they had 4 first-round draft picks, and now I don't know if that's necessarily there right now. These guys aren't proven commodities like they were heading into last year. John Mechie's your lead dog. The receiving core, and then the offensive line loses 3 starters from the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line. So there are some question marks on offense. If Miami can get pressure on the young quarterback, create a couple of turnovers, I think they make a game of it. It's one of those where, Alabama's about an 18.5-point favorite. I think Miami can make a game of it. And like I said, I don't think it'll be like last year's Clemson game, last year's North Carolina game, or even Alabama's openers for that matter, just due to the fact that they are rather very inexperienced on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, I cannot wait. It's going to be an Atlanta neutral site game. Manny Diaz is still looking for his signature win at the University of Miami. Who knows? It could be against Alabama. Phil, we've been talking about North Carolina a lot. That's really Miami's main competition, in my opinion, in the Coastal. Sam Howell, and I think he's the front runner for the Heisman. You can give it to Spencer Rattler. How do you think North Carolina is going to fare? Anything differently? I know they're losing some offensive playmakers, but going to the season, is the expectation to win the Coastal again for the North Carolina Tar Heels?
Yeah, and last year Miami would have won the Coastal had there been split divisions because they had the better record in the ACC for the season. And so when you take a look at the teams this year, I look at the fact that as far as North Carolina goes, having Sam Howell back is huge. Now, they do lose 2,000-yard running backs and their top 2 receivers, De'Ami Brown and Daz Newsome, are both in the NFL right now. However, I think with Sam Howell throwing the football, Brown and Newsome last year combined for about 1,700 yards. I think his top 2 receivers this year, no matter who it is, and I think it'll be a combination of, Bo Corrales, Khafre Brown, or Josh Downs. I think their top 2 receivers this year will also have 1,700 yards. So I'm not that concerned about the losses at receiver. I am concerned with their losses at running back, however. Michael Carter and Javonte Williams are guys that combined for they each had 1,000 yards last year, and combined they had about 7.6 yards per carry. So that's going to be tough. They're not going to have 2,000-yard rushers that average 7.6 yards a carry. They do have a solid running back addition in Ty Chandler. They've got depth there, but the running game is going to be a little bit weaker than last year. The offensive line's better. Sam Howell will be better, and I think the biggest difference with North Carolina this year is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. Last year, North Carolina gave up 401 yards per game, almost 30 points per game. But these guys look good getting off the bus. Mack Brown's done 3 great recruiting classes in his 3 years. They're big, they're strong, they're fast. I think they'll have one of the more improved defenses in the country. So that is clearly the big game for Miami. I have North Carolina an underdog in one game this year. That's at Notre Dame, and they're only a slight underdog in that one. I believe the Miami game is the one that decides the Coastal Division this year, and it will be a much better game than last year's, especially talking to Coach Diaz and Coach Brown about that.
I 100% agree, Phil. Every game Miami and UNC play in Chapel Hill, it's always a close game for Miami, whether they win or lose, or UNC usually wins by a huge margin. And Phil Longo, in my opinion, is one of the best offensive coordinators in college football. I'm extremely excited what he can incorporate with Sam Howell returning probably for his final year of college football. Phil, my last question for you. What's your early prediction on the 2021 Miami Hurricanes?
I've got Miami going 10-2 this year. I've got them an underdog against Alabama and underdog at North Carolina, about a 3-point dog in that game, but I have them favored in all the other games. So I think it's going to be another good year for Miami. Basically, if you're a 3-point underdog, you're one play away from winning the game, so they have an excellent opportunity to get that one in North Carolina. And if they do that, then it's the ACC title game. So I think the season for Miami probably boils down to October the 16th. And, I'll say this. One other team to keep your eye on if you're a Miami fan would be Pitt. Pitt is a team that could surprise a lot of folks this year. They get all the big boys at home. Kenny Pickett's back at quarterback. Keep your eyes on Israel Abanikanda at running back. He is going to give them a running back they haven't had. They've got Jordan Addison, Tayshaun Mack, and Shockey Jock Lewis at the receiving core. Lucas Krull's going to have a big-time impact as tight end after missing most last year with injury. And Narduzzi always develops a pass rush. So the only other team I think in the Coastal Miami's really got to worry about is Pitt. But I think Miami's season does come down to October the 16th when they travel to face North Carolina.
Gotta love it. Phil Steele, he never misses. I think Miami Hurricanes fans will take 10-2 with a bowl game win, and hopefully we'll get back in the right direction. Phil, once again, it's an honor, a privilege to speak with you. Where can the good people find your magazines nationwide?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Paul. And by the way, we got to get that bowl win for Miami. It's been since 2016. So, and Coach Diaz realizes that they need to win that bowl game. But the magazine's available right now at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. It was exclusive this year, and they're out and available at all the Barnes & Noble, all the Books A Millions, and that's your best way to get a copy. But if you don't see it at those two stores or you got one too far away, you can just go online at philsteele.com. And when you go to philsteele.com, go to the store. You can order both the hard copy and the digital version and get a $10 discount on the two combined. And when you do that, we are going to be updating the digital version all the way up through the start of the season with all the players that maybe hit the portal after the magazine went to the press June 15th, which there hasn't been a huge amount. But anybody who's out for the year, we'll have them circled. Any transfers that have come in, we'll add them to the pages. It'll be a completely up-to-date digital version to go along with the hard copy. And it's like getting 130 different media guides all rolled into one. It's a quick, easy reference. And once you get one of these magazines in your hands, you'll want to have one every single season.
Phil, thank you so much for your time. You're one of the most prolific college football writers out there, and it was really an honor again. Thank you, Phil.
Hey, Paul, a lot of fun chatting football with you today. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, Phil. Take care.